Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Today we've got a few things to discuss, including a couple of signings, one in Buffalo, one in Nashville, a couple of injury updates around the NHL, and some trade rumors involving the LA Kings and Edmonton Oilers, Chicago Blackhawks, and the Vancouver Canucks, with all that coming up right now. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here. Today I'll start things off with a couple of signings that have happened over the past few days. Start with the smaller one, as the Nashville Predators have extended forward Thomas Novak on a one-year extension that will have a cap hit of $800,000. Now Novak has been more of a depth player over the past couple of seasons, had only played in the AHL before last year, but is sort of becoming a good bomb six forward for the Predators over the past couple of seasons. He had a couple of fantastic seasons in the AHL as well. I mean, last year he hit over 30 points in 43 AHL games, did quite well, but he also got an opportunity at the NHL level, putting up his first career NHL goal and 7 points in 27 games. Look like he could be a good fourth, maybe third line forward for the Predators, and he's capitalized on that opportunity and got another one this year. He started the season off in the AHL, was over a point per game in the AHL, did fantastic this year, and then got a call up to Nashville, where so far he has 4 goals and 11 points in 20 games. So he's done quite well with the Nashville Predators. He still has been more of an AHL forward over the past couple seasons, but he's had more than 20 games of NHL experience in this year and last year. So it's good to see him get some time in the NHL. I do expect him to be a good maybe third or fourth line forward in a couple of seasons. So I think the one-year extension is pretty good for both sides. Novak can maybe start next year in the NHL if he can continue to do well this year, and maybe he becomes more of a regular on the NHL lineup. Maybe he can get into consistent third or fourth line roles for the Nashville Predators, and I could definitely see that. And for Nashville, he's done quite well this year, putting up 11 points in 20 games. So if he can continue that level of production, I think that $800,000 deal for next year will be a steal. So good job for Novak and Nashville to work out an extension. I expect Novak to continue to be a good, productive bomb six forward for the Predators. As for the bigger signing, it was with the Buffalo Sabres, as the Sabres have extended forward Dylan Cozens on a 7-year extension worth $49 million that will have an average annual value of $7.1 million. Now, Cozens is a great young forward, one of the young stars of the Sabres team. He looks like he could be the team's number 2 center for years to come, and I think extending him on this sort of deal is going to be a great deal for the Buffalo Sabres. If you look at his point totals, they're pretty good. This is Cozens' 3rd year in the NHL. His rookie year and even last year, to some extent, wasn't too productive. I mean, last year he only had 13 goals and 38 points in 79 games, so Cozens hadn't broke the 40-point barrier yet, so I don't think he was ever going to not be a good player. I think he was just still developing. But this year, he's really done absolutely fantastic for the Sabres. The Sabres are doing well. They're competing for a playoff spot, and Cozens is a big part of that, putting up 17 goals and 43 points in 49 games. So Cozens has done absolutely fantastic. I expect Thompson and Cozens to be the Sabres 1-2 punch going forward. Maybe they try and add another top 6 forward to that team, whether it be now or in the offseason, to complement those guys a little bit more. And they also have a lot of young guys coming up. I mean, they have Peterka and Quinn in this year, and they still have guys like Savoy and Rosen and Ostlund and Kulich coming in. So this team is stacked with good young players. It wouldn't surprise me at all if in time maybe they wind up moving one of those guys to try and get a decent upgrade. I don't think it will be this year because the Sabres are still just a fringe playoff team. But in time, maybe in the offseason or next year, it would not shock me at all if they wound up moving a decent prospect from the forward group to go out and get a forward. But definitely think that the Cozens extension is fantastic. I think getting him just over $7 million is going to be a really good steal for years to come. He's already close to the point per game mark. It would not surprise me if in the next year or two, Cozens was able to get over a point per game. So definitely think this is a pretty nice deal for the Sabres, and it will be a really good long-term deal for both sides. Cozens is going to get a really good bump in pay raise, and for the Sabres, they've got their 1-2 punch locked up at an affordable price long term. So I definitely think that I like this deal for both sides. I think Cozens will continue to be a really good top six center for both this year and in the future. I think his best years are still in front of him, and I think this deal will help both Cozens and the Sabres. So that's all the signings I want to get to today. Next, we go over to the injury update part of the video. We'll start with the Pittsburgh Penguins, as they've had both good and bad news on the injury front over the past few days. We'll start with the good news, as the Penguins were able to get back Kasperi Kapanen off of injury reserve and Josh Archibald off of long-term injury reserve, and both have gone back into game action. So for Kapanen, he had been out for about 2 weeks due to his injury. He'd been out for a little bit, but not too long. He was supposed to be out week to week, so given the fact he only missed a couple of weeks, I don't think it's too surprising for him to recover from his lower body injury. And I think in the right scenario, he could probably be a good third-line forward, a good speedy winger for our team. I just don't think that fits with Pittsburgh. He's been a healthy scratch on occasions this year, so not sure how well he'll fit back in with the Penguins now that he's healthy, but we'll have to wait and see. I still think he's a good third-line forward. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he went back to go play in like a bomb six role for the Penguins, but we'll have to wait and see. It also wouldn't surprise me if he winds up being a healthy scratch at some point. So definitely think it's good for the Penguins to get back Kapanen. Archibald isn't as good of a player as Kapanen, but he may be a more integral part of that team. He's a really good fourth-line right winger and can kill penalties, so to get him back of long-term injury reserve is good. He's been out for about a month, I want to say, with a lower body injury as well, so it's good to see Archibald get back. He's not the biggest of pieces there, but a good fourth-line forward, penalty killer, can really help that team out. So definitely think the additions of Archibald and Kapanen are going to help this team a lot. The one injury that was updated is that Tristan Jarry's undisclosed injury has been updated from unknown to now just day-to-day, and he has been placed on injury reserve. So Jarry has missed a little bit of time over the past little while. He's been in and out of the lineup for the last little while due to injuries, so it's not good to see him be placed back on injury reserve. Hopefully he can recover soon. It's now only day-to-day, so hopefully he's only out for like a game or two, maybe a week or two, but definitely think that hopefully Jarry can recover soon. They have running with the Smith and Tokarski right now, which isn't half bad, and they're doing all right, but I think with Jarry they could do a little bit better. So hopefully Jarry can get back and is healthy for the Penguins in the near future, but definitely good to see guys like Kapanen and Archibald get back into game action. Next is the Seattle Kraken, as they have had good and bad news on the injury front as well. We'll start with the good news, as Seattle Kraken forward Jaden Schwartz and Matty Beniers have both gone back from their injuries. Now, Schwartz has been out for about 3 weeks, maybe closer to a month, due to his undisclosed injury. Schwartz has definitely been a really good middle six forward for the Kraken this year, and has shown that he can be a really good point producer. Not one of the better forwards on this team, but a very valuable one nonetheless. And they've definitely missed his presence. With him being out, they were able to definitely make do, but definitely good to have him back in the lineup. And I expect Schwartz to go right back to being a good, productive forward for the Kraken. As for Beniers, that's a more significant update. Beniers took a really hard hit from Tyler Myers about a week and a half ago against the Vancouver Canucks before the All-Star break, and he left that game. He's missed, I think, only like a game or two since then, so it's good to see Beniers get back. He's a really, really good piece, both now and for the future for the Seattle Kraken. He's probably one of the favorites to win the Calder this year, and on top of that, he's a really, really good top six center for Seattle and has produced very, very well for the Kraken. So to get him back is a fantastic addition for Seattle. I expect him to continue to do great things for Seattle this year and continue to be a good offensive producer. Now, the one injury that the Kraken did suffer was Andrei Burakovsky, as he left the Kraken's game with a lower body injury and will be out for an unknown period of time. Now, for Burakovsky, he had just come off of injury about a couple of weeks ago, so to see him sustain another injury is not good. Now, we're not exactly sure the duration of this injury. He could be back for maybe the Kraken next game. He could be out for a couple of weeks. Not exactly sure what sort of injury timeline we're looking at for Burakovsky, but hopefully it's not too long and he can get back into game action soon. Burakovsky's a really good top six piece. The Kraken added him in the offseason in free agency, and he's done really well helping this team have one of the more lethal offenses in the NHL. So good to see Beniers and Schwartz get back. That should greatly improve that offense and should really help them strengthen their depth. But not good to see Burakovsky go out due to injury, and hopefully he can recover in the near future, but he may have to miss a game or two. over with the Chicago Blackhawks, they activated a few players off of injury reserve, as Tyler Johnson and Jared Tenorti have gone back off of injury reserve and are going to be inserted in the lineup soon. Now, for Tyler Johnson, he has gone back into game action. He's done alright this year. He's more of a middle six forward for the Blackhawks. He hasn't missed too much time, only missed about a couple of weeks. And with the All-Star break in there, he didn't really miss much game time. So good to see Johnson get back. He was dealing with an ankle injury, so it's good to see him recover from that. He's not the most productive forward, and his contract is not the greatest, but he's a middle six forward, and I think he can definitely do all right with the Blackhawks. The Hawks are not competing for a playoff spot, so they'd probably rather lose some games to try and get closer to Bedard, but definitely think the addition of Johnson should help the depth of that team. As for Tenorti, he didn't get back into game action in the Hawks' first game back from the All-Star break. I would expect he'll probably get back into game action over the next game or two. Tenorti had missed about a month and a half with a face injury, so I don't think it's too surprising that even though he was activated, he didn't get into game action over the last game for the Hawks. But I definitely think Tenorti is a really good physical third-pair defenseman for the Hawks, and getting him back in the lineup will be a huge boost for the Hawks, and I expect that to probably happen in the next little while. So hopefully Tenorti and Johnson can help the Hawks team do maybe a little bit better. The Hawks are probably not wanting to win too many games given the fact they're trying to go after Bedard, but definitely think that the Johnson and Tenorti recovery will definitely help that team's depth. And now lastly, with a couple of injury updates here with just a few good players, starting with their injuries. Florida forward Alex Barkov suffered a hand injury, and he's going to be out for an unknown period of time. And Jonas Brodin suffered a lower body injury, and he's going to be out day to day right now. So Brodin suffered his injury in Monday's game, the Wild's first game back since the All-Star break. So not good to see Brodin out. I know he's already missed one game due to his injury, so hopefully he's not out for too long. It's only day to day right now, so maybe he's back within the next game or two for the Wild. But it could end up being longer. Brodin's a really good defensive defenseman and a very key top forward piece for the Minnesota Wild. So hopefully he can get back in game action. As for Barkov, he also suffered an injury in the Panthers' first game back off of the All-Star break. And to see him go down is also not a really good thing for the Florida Panthers. Barkov is the Panthers' top-line center, so to see him go down with an injury is not good. It's also really bad that he's going to be out for an unknown period of time. That really puts a damper on what his timeline could be right now. But definitely think that if he can recover soon, maybe he's back in the next game or two. But it could wind up being a little bit longer for Barkov. So hopefully Brody can get back in game action soon for the Wild. Continue to help that top 4D. I know that the Wild have a pretty good top 7 on the team right now, so if Brodin's out, they can easily put a guy like Goligoski or Merrill in. So while it's a big injury, I don't think it'll hurt the Wild too much if it's just a short-term injury. As for Barkov, hopefully he only misses a game or two, but definitely think that if he's out for a big period of time, that could hurt the Panthers for a while. So hopefully he can recover from his hand injury in the near future. As for the other activations that have happened, Philip Hronek recovered from his injury and will return to game action, and Zach Whitecloud has been activated off of long-term injury reserve and returned to game action. Now, we talked about in our last video that Hronek was dealing with an injury, so to see him get back and be healthy is good. He didn't miss any time at all, so it's good to see it was only a minor injury for Hronek, so to see him recover from his upper body injury is a pretty good thing, and hopefully he can continue to be a good top 4 defenseman for the Detroit Red Wings, as he has been a really good offensive producer on that blue line for Detroit. As for Whitecloud, he has missed about a month and a half, maybe closer to 2 months due to his injury. He was placed on LTIR a while ago and was going to be out month to month, so I don't think it's too surprising he's missed a couple of months. But definitely think that the activation makes this has been one of the healthiest they've been all season. The only players who are on injury reserve right now are Weber, Patrick, and Leonard, and those three are already injured before the season started. And they do have big injury to Mark Stone, which is still not really great, and Daniel Miramanov is also injured, but definitely good to see Vegas gets a little bit more healthy. Whitecloud's a really good third pair defenseman who can help offensively at times, so good to see Whitecloud get back. He should definitely continue to help the Knights defensively and continue to help be a good defenseman with Nick Hague on that third pair. And Hronek should go back and be a really good top 4 defenseman for the Red Wings to continue to be a good offensive producer. So I definitely like that both of these guys have been activated and we're getting a little bit more healthier around the NHL. So good news for the Red Wings and the Golden Knights on the injury front. Now that's all the injury updates I want to talk about for today. Sorry everyone, this is just an update from a couple of hours into the future from after I recorded this video. We just have a huge trade update to announce as the New York Rangers and St. Louis Blues have pulled off a blockbuster deal. The St. Louis Blues have moved Vladimir Tarasenko and Nikola to the New York Rangers in exchange for Sammy Blais, Hunter Skinner, a conditional 2023 first-round pick, and a conditional 2024 fourth-round pick. And I'll just talk about that trade quickly here. So first of all, the big piece of the deal is Vladimir Tarasenko. He's going to help that Rangers offense immensely. He's the top 6 forward that the Rangers have been looking for. Some reports have come out since the trade that the Rangers may have been wary of the trade price for Kane, on top of the fact that his hip injury gave them some concerns. So this may be why the Rangers changed directions and went to Tarasenko instead of Kane. So because a lot of people did think that New York was the likely landing spot for Kane. So definitely do think that that might be the reason why they've made the Tarasenko trade right now. On top of this, Tarasenko's a really good goal scorer. He'll fit in really well in that top 6 with the Rangers. 3 and 4 years ago, he didn't have overly great seasons. He was injured a lot with his shoulder injury. After the shortened season, he had asked for a trade, and he never ended up getting that until this point. So his trade request has been there for a year and a half. He's finally able to move on now. Last year, he had a phenomenal season. He's hit 70 points in his career a few times. He's hit over 60. Last year, he finally broke the 80-point barrier, putting up 34 goals and 82 points in 75 games last year. It was absolutely brilliant. Now this year, he's dealt with some injuries. Blues haven't been as strong a team as they were last year. A lot of their players who had good seasons last year aren't really living up to those same expectations as they did last year. And he's only gotten 10 goals and 29 points in 38 games. So definitely a lot less productive than he was last year, but he's still a really good goal scorer. He's had 30-goal seasons multiple times over his career. He will probably fit in really well. I would guess he probably fits in on the second line for the Rangers, maybe with Vincent Trocheck and Artemi Panarin. I mean, Tarasenko and Panarin are both Russian players, so they'll probably get along really well. Panarin's a playmaker. Tarasenko's a sniper. I just think it works perfectly for the Rangers. So the Rangers slot Tarasenko onto the right wing of their second line, and that team becomes immensely better than they were before. Tarasenko's a great upgrade. The Blues do retain half of his salary, so the Rangers only acquire $3.75 million on his cap hit instead of the full $7.5 million. And Tarasenko had a full no-move clause, so he had to waive that no-move clause to go to Rangers, which he obviously wound up doing. So good to see Tarasenko get his fresh start elsewhere. Not exactly sure if the Rangers will try and extend Tarasenko, but definitely think that this is a really great deal for the Rangers to get a good top 6 forward in Tarasenko. And that's not the only thing going to New York, as they are also going to get Nikola from the Blues. Now, Nikola had a really great season last year, as most of the Blues did. He put up 13 points, having 3 goals in 54 games. He did quite well as a good physical presence on the third pair, but this year he hasn't been able to replicate that production, only having 3 assists in 50 games this year. So he hasn't been as productive, but I still think he's a really good third pair defenseman. The Rangers, after this trade, placed Libor Hajek on waivers, so it makes sense that they did that, given the fact that they still need some cap space, but also the roster spots. Hayek and Ben Harper, who was also called up during the season, have been the 2 players who have basically been playing on that third pair on the left side, along with Braden Schneider. So the acquisition of Nikola is going to help them with that third pair spot. They can slot Nikola right on the left side, pair him up with Braden Schneider, and make a really legit and scary top 6 for the Rangers in that defensive core. So really great addition for the Rangers here. Tarasenko's going to help them with their goal scoring. He's going to be a really productive top 6 winger, and he's going to, I think, have great chemistry with a guy like Artemi Panarin. Mikkola shows up that third pair and the top 6 for the Rangers. Mikkola, I think, is a pretty good defenseman, even though he's not the greatest of the additions. I think he's definitely better than guys like Harper, Hayek, and Jones, who had been playing on that third pair with Schneider at various points this season. So I really like the addition of Mikkola and Tarasenko. As for the Blues side of the deal, they get Sammy Blais, Now, Blake actually started his career with St. Louis, played some of his better seasons with the Blues. The COVID stop season and the shortened season a couple years ago were his best seasons, getting up 13 points in the COVID stop season and 15 points in the shortened season, and he did quite well in both of those seasons. But after that season, he was dealt to the Rangers in the Pavel Buchnevich trade. He's been with the Rangers the past year and a half. He only got into 14 games last year due to injuries, and he only put up 4 assists. This year's gone into a lot more games with the Rangers, getting into 50 games, but he's only put up 5 assists. So he doesn't even have a goal with the Rangers, and then he's dealt. So I think going back to St. Louis will be good for Blake. He should definitely continue to be a good top 9 forward, especially with Tarasenko now not in the lineup. He should be a good third pair forward for the Blues, continue to be a good productive player for them. I'm not exactly sure if the Blues will keep him. He is a pending unrestricted free agent with a $1.5 million cap hit and is a good bottom 6 forward. So given the fact the Blues are shaping up to be really big sellers, they may wind up flipping him to another team for an asset. So I'm not exactly sure if Blake's going to remain with the Blues past the deadline. But a pretty good deal nonetheless. I mean, to make the cap work, they had to take on a contract. So Blake was the one that made sense for the Blues. So definitely think it's a really good pickup for the Blues. They get prospect Hunter Skinner. Skinner is not trending towards being an NHL player right now, but that may change. He was a 4th round pick in 2019. He was in college until a couple of years ago. He's then split time between the AHL and ECHL over the past few seasons. Last year he was only in the AHL. He got 4 goals, 13 points, 49 games. Looked to be a good possible future third pair defenseman for the Rangers. But then this year he only had 2 assists in 8 AHL games, and has since played in the ECHL, where he had 3 goals and 8 points in 22 games. So I definitely think that Skinner could still be, at some point in his career, a good NHL. Would not be surprised if he still doesn't amount to anything. But maybe a fresh start in St. Louis. Maybe he gets into the AHL roster for the Blues. He shows that he can still be a good player. Maybe eventually, in maybe a couple of years, he can show that he's a good third pair defenseman at the NHL level. I think it's possible. I'm not going to guarantee that Skinner winds up being an NHL player. So, okay prospect, but not someone who's definitely an elite level prospect, goes back to the Blues. And then they get 2 picks. Now, the first round pick is a conditional pick. The Rangers trade Nils Lundkvist earlier in the offseason to Dallas and were able to acquire the Stars' first round pick for this year. So they had 2 first round picks for this upcoming draft. Now, the Rangers and the Stars are both trained to be playoff teams and will most likely go on good playoff runs and finish high in the standings. So the Rangers will be giving the Blues the later of the 2 picks. So the Rangers or the Stars, whichever one finishes lower in the draft, will be the one that the Rangers give the Blues. So I don't think that's too bad for the Rangers. I mean, they still have a first round pick in this deep draft, so that's pretty good. So the Nils Lundkvist deal really does help get Vladimir Tarasenko for the Rangers playoff run this year. I think it's a pretty good piece for the Blues to get, and it's not too substantial of a piece for the Rangers to lose. And then the 4th round pick for next year, the 2024 draft, the condition on that is that if the Rangers do wind up making the playoffs, which it seems that they're trying to do it this year, that 2024 4th rounder will upgrade to a 2024 3rd rounder. Now, the Rangers also have given a condition on that 2024 3rd rounder to the Yotes. As part of the Patrick Nemeth deal, they gave the Yotes the opportunity to pick between a 2024 3rd and a 2026 2nd that the Rangers would have to give to the Arizona. So I'm not exactly sure how that would work if the Arizona wants the 2024 3rd rounder and the Rangers have already given the Blues the 2024 3rd rounder. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works, but definitely I think this is a pretty good trade for both sides. Rangers get a top 6 forward and a third pair defenseman that will help their playoff run for right now. The Blues get a middle 6 winger who they could possibly move as a trade chip in the deadline, but has familiarity with the organization. A possible third pair defenseman of the future, but definitely would not say that he's going to make the NHL for sure. I think it's a possibility, but it's quite possible that Hunter Skinner doesn't even amount to much. But they do get maybe probably a late 1st round pick in this year's draft and a 4th or 3rd round pick in next year's draft. So I think this is a pretty good package. I definitely think at this point that the Rangers probably did win the deal. I would like to know what you think. Do the Rangers or Blues win this deal? And in now or in the future, who wins this deal? I don't think it's as much as people were expecting Tarasenko to go for. So I definitely think this is a good deal. I don't think this is the last move either of these teams will do. The Blues are shaping up to be big-time sellers. They have a few other pending unrestricted free agents who could be moved. We know that Ryan O'Reilly's a big name who could be shipped off by the St. Louis Blues. We know that Ivan Barbashev's name has been out there as well. Noel Acciari is a good depth player, could also be moved. So there's definitely a few guys out there with the Blues. Blake could also be moved for the right price possibly. So there's definitely going to be a few guys out there for St. Louis who could possibly be moved. As for the Rangers, there has been some talk that even though this is their big move, they could go after a depth piece who could help them on the fourth line like they did last year with the Tyler Mott. So I definitely think that both teams could still make a move, but pretty good deal for both sides, as the Rangers get two good pieces for their playoff run, and the Blues get a few future assets as they shape up to be sellers before the deadline. Next, we go over to the trade rumor part of the video. We'll start with the Canucks, as there have been a few more recent updates surrounding Canucks defenseman Luke Schenn. According to a few reports, one from David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period, and one from Elliot Friedman on his 32 Thoughts blog, those two have both linked the Bruins and the Flames to possibly having interest in Luke Schenn. I know Pagnotta said the Bruins have sort of checked in on the availability of Shen and what sort of the price would be for him. As for Friedman, he said that he knows that the Bruins have been sort of checking on some big-time left-shot defensemen with guys like Gavrikov and Chychrun, but he says that he's also heard that the Bruins have also checked in on Canucks defenseman Luke Schenn. As for Calgary, Friedman said that he wouldn't be surprised if the Flames did have some interest, especially with the fact that Chris Tanev keeps on going in and out of the lineup due to injuries. And Pagnotta also said that the Flames may have interest as well. So it seems that the Bruins and Flames definitely have some interest. Shen's a really good, cheap defenseman, plays a really good top four role, and is really, really cost controlled for this year. So if there was a team who was really pressed up against the cap and could only add a player for like under $1 million, Shen could be that player. Shen's a really good top four defenseman. His cap hit for this year is only $850,000, which will intrigue a ton of teams out there, given the fact that he's a really good top four defenseman, and he is a really good physical presence, but he's at cheap costs, something that guys like Gavrikov and Gostisbehere don't have. So I definitely think that Shen could easily be moved. There's also been some talk that the Canucks could probably retain him and maybe try and resign him. But given the fact that there's all of these teams who would love a cheap defenseman like Shen, and it might create a bidding war, the price may wind up being too much to turn down for Vancouver. So I would not be surprised at all if Shen is moved. I also heard a few weeks ago that Tampa may have interest as well. So Boston, Calgary, Tampa may all have some sort of interest in Luke Schenn. He's a really good, cheap right-shot defenseman, having a pretty good season, putting up 18 points in 50 games. So he's not the best offensive producer, but can produce at some points offensively. So I think Boston, Calgary, Tampa are teams to watch out for and possibly acquiring Luke Schenn. There was also a couple of reports yesterday that maybe the Dallas Stars could also have interest too. So there's definitely going to be a few teams interested in Shen. Still not guaranteed he moves. I would say that the Canucks definitely have some interest in retaining his services. But with all of these teams really wanting a cheap defenseman, it would not surprise me at all if the Canucks do wind up moving him for a pretty nice package. Over with the Chicago Blackhawks, there have been a few reports from different sources that the Hawks could be nearing a decision on both Patrick Kane and Toews. Now, starting with David Pagnotta, he said that the Hawks have started to approach Kane and Toews about teams who could possibly have interest, trying to figure out what deals Kane and Toews would accept, given the fact they both have no move clauses and they control their destiny. But he says no decision on both Kane and Toews is imminent. Then on the TSN Insider trading video, Pierre Lebrun said that the agent for those two players told him that they're getting closer to a decision, whether it be that Kane or Toews winds up accepting a trade and the Hawks wind up moving them, or if they say they're going to not move their no-move clause and they're going to remain with the Hawks for the rest of the season. So definitely going to be interesting to see about that. He also said that acquiring teams who have some sort of interest in a guy like Taylor Kane are going to have to get ready for about 7 to 10 days before the trade deadline to get ready for possibly acquiring Kane and Toews. They're saying that's probably around the time that Kane and Toews will make the decision. And that's also what Elliot Friedman said. He says the decision for Kane and Toews will probably be made around 10 days before the trade deadline. And that, while the Kane and Toews really wanted to remain Blackhawks for life, they're sort of accepting their fate that they probably will be moved before the deadline. And they probably will wind up waiving their no-move clause. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. 10 days before the trade deadline puts us at around February 21st. So maybe sometime around February 21st is when we finally get the decisions on both Kane and Toews as to if they would accept the trade, and maybe that sort of starts to speed up the process of them being moved by the Blackhawks. But definitely going to be interesting to see what happens with Kane and Toews. I would like to know what you think. Does Kane and or Toews wind up moving his no-move clause? And if so, which team do you see getting Kane or Toews? And lastly here with the Edmonton Oilers and the LA Kings, on the TSN Insider training video, Pierre LeBrun also said that the Kings and Oilers have some overlapping targets when it comes to some players that they would like to add before the trade deadline. Now, the Oilers and Kings are both in a pretty good spot. They're both in playoff positions. Kings are right now third in the Pacific. Oilers are first wild card, but they're within a point of each other. And they both look like they probably will make the playoffs. So definitely think that adding for those two teams is not too surprising. We have heard some talk that the Kings may want to go after a goalie, and the Oilers may want to try and upgrade some at the forward group. The main spot that both teams wanted to add is defense. And LeBrun said that they have had some overlapping interests in some big-time defensemen. He says the Kings and Oilers both have interest in Chychrun. The Kings and Oilers have both checked in on pending UFA Gavrikov. The Kings and Oilers have both talked to the Montreal Canadiens about Joel Edmundson. So it definitely looks like both of these teams want a really top-four left-shot defenseman. It was not surprising. The Kings have really wanted a left-shot defenseman for a little while now. They're probably willing to move a Sean Walker or Matt Roy to make that happen. They have like 5 good right-shot defensemen, including Brandon Clark. There's probably a good right-shot defenseman for the future, but they don't have too many good left-shot defensemen right now. In Edmonton, they have a pretty good D-core, but they haven't replaced Duncan Keith since he retired last offseason. So that's really made a hole in their top 4 on the left side. So I don't think it's too surprising that these two teams have some overlapping interests. I definitely still think that the Kings are probably the front runner for Chychrun. Another thing LeBrun said is that the Bruins do also have some interest in Chychrun and have started to get into conversations. So definitely think that there's definitely a few other teams now who are starting to show some interest in Chychrun. I know at the beginning it was like Ottawa and St. Louis and Columbus, but it's definitely starting to look like it might be LA, Edmonton, Boston who have interest now. So definitely going to be interesting to see where Chychrun's moved. I still think that the Kings are probably the most interested in Chychrun and would have the best assets to pull off a deal. But definitely wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton had some interest too. I know we've heard a lot of Edmonton trying to acquire Edmundson this year for possibly a first-round pick. But given the fact that Edmonton's a really good top-4 defenseman, it would not surprise me at all if the Kings also had interest. And Gavrikov's a pending unrestricted free agent on a pretty affordable deal who can play top 4 minutes, so it's not surprising that both of these teams have interest. So definitely think that both LA and Edmonton are probably going to acquire defensemen. Of these three, I'll probably say Edmonton's most likely with Edmundson and LA's most likely with Chychrun. But definitely kind of funny to see that these Pacific Division teams have some overlapping interests in some key defensemen. It's definitely going to be interesting to see which defenseman winds up moving to LA and Edmonton before the trade line. But I'd like to know what you think. Do the Kings and Oilers wind up acquiring a lethal top 4 defenseman before the deadline? And if so, which one goes to LA and which one goes to Edmonton? Now that's all I want to talk about for today. Remember to like this video and subscribe. I also do a blog, which I will leave a link to in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.